Hi, in this video, we're going to talk about Greek present system verbs. So really quickly, um, one important thing to keep in mind is we're going to be talking about the present system, not the present tense. This will include multiple tenses. A lot of times people talk about tenses at a time, and I think this sort of way of looking at it makes more sense. Um, it sort of encapsulates things in an easier way to look at them. I think. So we're going to be talking about the Greek present system, specifically of thematic verbs, and we're not going to be doing in this video contracted or vowel stem Greek verbs. We're just going to keep things very simple. So really quickly, what the systems are. So the systems are a tense and any other tenses that inflectionally go along with it. So a tense and anything else that conjugates very similar to it or based off of the same general sets of rules. And you'll see what I mean as we get going. So we're going to talk about the present tense really quickly. And so what we're going to do here is we've got this is going to be singular, this is going to be the plural. And then we've got the first person, second person, third person, and then again, first person, second person, third person. There's also a dual in ancient Greek. We will talk a little bit about that, but the forms of dual are actually quite easy to remember. I don't have any problem with using these Wikipedia tables and then going through and then adding the dual. Just sort of, I guess not manually, but just sort of almost as an afterthought, because the dual, in my opinion, is actually quite simple. So we'll do the singular and the plural in this table, and then we'll do the dual sort of separately. So first of all, we've got the indicative here. These are different moods, by the way. We've got the subjunctive, we've got the optative, and the imperative. And we also have infinitives and participles. So I'm just going to explain what these mean. Indicative, in terms of meaning, generally means that the use of this verb form implies that something has happened or is happening. It implies a statement of fact. So this verb means to loose, essentially. So leo means I loose, you loose, he, she, or it looses, we loose, you all, or you plural loose, and they loose. The subjunctive, however, does not imply that. It, in and of itself, just implies that this verb is in some sort of a subordinate clause. So we have a subjunctive in English. We don't use it a ton. Some people aren't even aware it exists, and some people don't use it at all. But there are other uses for the subjunctive. There are also other uses for the indicative, by the way. But in general, it's a good basic semantic idea to have in mind with the subjunctive, is it implies that this is not the main verb. So it can be used for hypothetical things, for example. The optative, the implication, the semantic implication behind the optative is wish. So, oh, that I would. There are other uses of the optative, but it's good to keep in mind that that's sort of the underlying semantic idea. The imperative is a command, so do something. And here you can see the most obvious English example. Saying clean your room is not the same thing, as telling someone or saying that somebody is cleaning his or her room. It's just not the same thing. This is indicative would imply factuality, imperative would be a command telling someone to do something. The infinitive is to do something, so to, loose, and the participle, these are the masculine, feminine, and neuter forms doing something. So it's an adjective describing somebody that is loosening something. So the loosening man, the man who's loosening something. Really quickly, I'll just go over the forms here. We've got Leo, lies, lie, and you can't see that it's supposed to be an accent and a macron. So this is a long epsilon and it's got an accent on it. Leo men liete liusin. And this is a new movable, so it occurs when this word is before a vowel or at the end of a sentence. Otherwise, it won't be there. So if you memorize these, this is going to be very important. You'll see variations on these endings a lot. When you come to the subjunctive, what you'll see is that all of these are essentially lengthenings of the vowel of this one. So this, you can't lengthen an omega, so it's just an omega. If you lengthen this epsilon, it becomes an eta, and then this iota becomes a iota subscript. Same thing here. We lengthen the first vowel here, omicron becomes an omega. Lengthen the epsilon here becomes an eta, and if we lengthen omicron epsilon, technically it's already long, but this one you should just memorize. It will become over here an omega. The next thing, moving on to the next one over here, we've got the optative. The optative has very similar endings, as you can see. This sigma, this men, this te, those are all the same. And this lack of any consonant here, that's also the same. There are two endings that are different. We have a mi instead of an omega, and we have an oyen. Just memorize this as one whole unit instead of something with a sigma. So if you memorize the oyen and the mi, the consonant parts of the endings are pretty easy. And then instead of having whatever vowel we have here, connecting the consonant portion of the ending to the stem, we have oi all the way throughout. So li oi mi, li ois, li oi men, li oi te, li oyen. The imperative, this is actually technically including adjussive. Some people distinguish between adjussive and imperative. We'll just keep it simple and say these are all imperatives. There's no first person imperative, so no commanding yourself to do something. Lie, because remember this is long, and so it's an accented long vowel before a short vowel ending the word. So it'll be this was just a normal rule of accents. Lie means loosen, sorry. Lieto means may he or she or it loosen. Also, no first person plural adjussive or imperative. Then we've got liete, so notice this is the same as this form right here. And lionton, lietosan, and those are just variations that are all appropriate, that are both appropriate for the third person. So let or may they loosen. There is a way to say may I loosen. We'll talk about that a little bit more when we talk about syntax and usages of specifically the optative and subjunctive. Actually will come into play a little bit there. But just understand the meaning of this is loosen, may he or she or it loosen to a group of people, and may they loosen. And these ones are best memorized. We've already talked about this and the meaning of this. I just want to go over really quickly how you can do present tense duals. So the endings for duals in the present system, or in the actually in this, for all of these forms, are going to be ton. So eton. So lieton for second person dual and lieton for the third person dual. The first person dual is exactly the same as the first person plural. So it's liomen. So lieton, and by the way, it's always the same. It's not just, doesn't just happen to be the same here. There's no distinct first person dual. For the subjunctive, you'll lengthen the vowel. Lieton. For the optative, you will actually, I think we'll talk about the optative and the imperative dual a little bit later. No, we can talk about it now, actually. So we have li oi ton, and we have, for the third person, it changes. So this is sort of an exception. The oi tan. Sorry, li oi ton, accents here, and li oi tan. And so, and then for the imperative, it's lieton, so exactly the same as the indicative. And then it would be, actually, we will talk about the imperative later. So we'll keep it simple. We'll talk about the imperative in its own video. Really quickly, I want to talk about the imperfect tense. So I include this with the present tense, the present system, because the imperfect is actually going to use the same stem, and because a lot of systems of verbs will what they'll do is they'll have a very similar conjugation, but with this epsilon, and this marks something as having past time, so past tense. So this is I used to lose, or I was losing. So these endings, you'll see, they look very similar. You'll see that the third person plural and the first person singular are the same ending. But you'll just prepend before the stem an epsilon, and then the if the accent can go back that far, because remember it can only go 3 syllables back, it will go that far back. So you'll have to memorize a couple new endings. So this one's completely new. This one's similar to the present one, but it's not the same. These two are the same. This one is also similar to the present ending, but it's not the same. And then this one is new. So 3, there'll be 2 that are completely new, 2 that are similar, and 2 that are the same endings. So this is I was losing, you were losing, he was loosening, we were loosening, they were loosening, we were loosening, you all were loosening, and they were loosening. Now we're going to go talk about the middle passive. So these are very similar in some aspects. Now we've got these omicrons and these epsilons a lot, connecting these these endings beginning with consonants to the vowel. There's just a couple things I want to point out. We've got the endings are my, tai, metha, ste, and ntai. The underlying ending here is psi, but this sigma gets dropped because it's between vowels. A lot of times that happens in Greek, sigmas between vowels get dropped, but you will see it sort of pop up other places in morphology, and then it gets smushed together with the epsilon before it and becomes this or this. So my, sai, tai, metha, ste, ntai. And in general, with all these forms, before an N or a nu or a mu, you'll have an omicron, and then elsewhere you'll have an epsilon. So that'll help you distinguish between those. To make the subjunctive, we will lengthen the vowel using the same rules as before. To make the optative, now we're going to use oi, and we're going to use slightly different endings for the optative. I'll talk a little bit about why the optative tends to have different endings, but it's man, so, to, metha, ste, nto. So just memorize those, and those will crop up later. But you'll use oi for the vowel connecting those endings everywhere. For these forms right here, you'll use also slightly different endings. U, which is really so, but we have this sigma dropout, and then these two combine to be u. And then stol, and then ston right here, or estosan. And then we have liestai, that will be the infinitive, to be loosed. And then these are the participles, being loosed, masculine, feminine, and neuter. So really quickly, the middle passive, the meaning behind this is that something is being done to the subject. So in this case, the active was loose, to loosen. This would be to be loosed. So if I'm loosening my bootstrap, that would be I lio, and then you put bootstrap in the accusative. Here, if the bootstrap is being loosened, we'd say the bootstrap in the nominative, and then we'd say li e tai. And then in the imperfect, we're going to have the same thing. We have the epsilon here. Here, the word is too long for us to have the accent go all the way back there. But we have very similar endings. So, man, so, to, methas, te, nto. And the same rule determining whether we have an omicron or an epsilon here, connecting the stem to the ending. So basically, it really shouldn't be that hard to just crank through these and memorize these forms. It looks like a lot, but the present system, these verb forms are going to be sort of your core that you're always going back to. So just do the nitty-gritty work to be able to memorize them all. And here we've got our ancient Greek grammar tables. This is where I got most of the tables from. Those are really useful. Also, I think this video is just getting a little bit too long. That's sort of, I wanted to hustle through. So we didn't cover the dual forms for this, and we also didn't cover the dual forms for the imperative here. I would just like to go back and do another video where we cover all the dual forms at once instead of spending a little bit extra time here, because they are a little bit different with the middle passive